Hello all, and welcome back to another episode of TV and Us, a conversation show about the TV series we just can't stop talking about. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And we are joined by Patrick and Nate as we go through True Detective Season 1. So each season on this show, we focus on a different show, reviewing it episode by episode, and we invite you to watch along with us. We are today going to be talking about episode 5, which is titled The Secret Fate of All Life. If you haven't watched it yet, this is your spoiler alert. Please check it out before continuing to listen. Okay. Sarah, do you want to kick us off with an IMDb summary for episode 5?
Sure. Hart and Cole share the spoils of a solved case. Papania and Gilbo confront the detectives with troubling new intelligence.
All right. And now we are going to share our episode titles of choice. Sarah, what was yours?
Mine is Time is a Flat Circle.
Nate?
Mine is Some Say Ginger's Still Tied Up in That Ditch.
Amazing. Patrick, what was yours?
Deal With Me.
Nice.
Very good.
Mine is Inflection Point.
That was supposed to be last week. I mean, with Sarah, that was supposed to be last week.
Yeah, for the meta show. Yeah.
Sorry to disappoint you guys.
Well, Sarah, tell us your thoughts about episode 5.
Oh no.
Oh man, I have to go first again. It's fine. It's the worst thing to say. I'm sorry. It's
Drink.
fine. Yeah.
Swig.
I liked some parts of it, like when Rust was covering up the murder scene, and I liked watching Rust get the two detectives like really uneasy, and we get to learn a little bit more about their investigation here. So like those parts were really interesting to me, but I'm still not hooked like everybody else is. I'm glad that we're making progress on the case. I'm glad that we solved that first case. But I'm still I'm not as hooked as you guys. So it's fine.
Could you walk away from the show right now?
Yes.
I don't think that's going to change.
Yeah, that's where I feel like the inflection point is arguably this week. I thought it was last week, but I had some hope. I had some thoughts during this episode where I was like, there's a whole, like, we've shifted perspective on this whole story at this point, that there could be some like interesting directions that we go
Time out. Jen, I want to unpack all of that. Sarah, clearly, based on what you've shared so far, you did not do your homework.
I watched the first episode of season 2, and season 1 is better than season 2. So you guys were right. But
Is there a button there?
I still, it didn't change necessarily my experience in season 1, but it does make me appreciate the clear distinction between the quality of season 1 and the quality of season 2.
How was your long drive through Louisiana?
Oh, yeah, no, it was hell because it's approximately 8,000 degrees in Texas right now, and crossing over into Louisiana, that's also not great. So it's lovely to be in a car for that many hours.
What were your thoughts on the episode, Jen?
I thought that last episode was going to be the like shift of the show. It's the halfway point, but I think so much more actually happens in this episode, and it's almost like the mental image that I have is like we were viewing this whole thing from one angle, and we've now totally shifted angles, and the camera has this episode took our little camera out and moved it into a totally different perspective on all of the details that we knew, all of the framing, the characters. And so I think it's going to be fascinating to see where the show ultimately goes, because it is so character driven, as we've talked about many a times, that how this show ultimately has these characters make their final decisions, I think will be pretty indicative of the thesis of what the show believes about human beings and these two men and how they're wired and who they are as people. So I appreciated the way that this episode complicates a lot of what we thought we knew. And now I'm like, now that you've complicated, like, where are you going to resolve these pieces now that you've thrown in a million more other dimensions and angles? So there's other like details from the first few episodes that I've like boomeranged back around the task force and these larger systems of society and corruption that I think is going to be really interesting. I think this episode to me represents what there's a kind of like screenwriting concept around stakes being limited to micro stories and individuals and individual heroes and villains. To the minute we take the stakes and tie them to the overarching systems, there's a lot more here, right? Like, this is not just about like one bad guy, it's about a system of bad people perpetuating bad things, which I think could potentially be interesting. I don't know if the show's going to keep going down that path, but it seems to be highly suggesting the interconnectedness of all these parts of society just fueling each other. So I'm intrigued by that.
So what you're saying is that you also could walk away and not watch the rest of it and be just fine.
I feel like Sarah needs a comrade in all of this. But no. Nate, Pat, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that this is sort of the point in the show where it gets like the scope broadens and it gets a little bit more. I hesitate to use the word conspiratorial, but I think that is like the correct word with like the broader systems that you're talking about and everything. But yeah, overall, like I like the episode. I really like the sort of culmination of like the first half leading up to that, the ranch or cook farm or whatever you want to call it. And I love the sort of effect of the divergence between like the present day narration of like this like war zone thing, and the sort of like slow moving events happening on screen. I thought that was really effective at like the dissonance in that narration is really effective at like imbibing tension into something that we know like they come out alive of because like they're obviously like narrating the story. But yeah, other than that, I still can't get past how shit the car scenes look. Like the opening scene where he's like driving to the ranch, I was like, this looks like it's like Sin City, like a knockoff of Sin City.
You hold your tongue about insulting Sin City, sir.
Sin City did it intentionally, which is what makes it delightful, but it sticks out like crazy. Like Matthew McConaughey driving like a forklift because he's winging the wheel everywhere. There's like garbage looking projection behind him. I was like, what? Why couldn't you do this part right? But yeah, I mean, I love the show, so I thought it was great.
Pat, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I enjoyed this episode. Again, I think there's a lot that happens both in, well, I would say, in terms of advancing the case as well as development for the characters. I also agree in terms of kind of like the scope widening. This is, where the two detectives who are conducting the interviews, like the rubber kind of hits the road with them and they go from just being like effectively NPCs to actual characters with purpose. Um, and so it's interesting to see like, okay, what is this actually all about? Like this conversation that's felt very much like a vehicle to tell this story now actually has a point to it and is driving at something. What is it driving towards?
I appreciated that we get to see more to Rust. I feel like we've seen a lot in Marty's flaws and the way that those play out very clearly and very obviously, and the show's like not like totally unashamed to show all of that for him. But I'm intrigued the way that they're going to complicate Rust as a character. And we know that, and we've seen that he has a insane amount of cynicism about the world, and he has like pretty extreme worldviews, and his decision making can sometimes be pretty dramatic around him feeling like there's no other choice between these two extreme options. But I feel like we're now going to get to see how that actually plays out for him a little bit more. Um, and I think that that will be pretty fascinating because I think that this episode actually feels like it confirms to me a little bit more that there's so much that revolves around Rust with this show's most interesting parts,
Mm-hmm.
and that it continues to be, like in a lot of ways, Marty is like a side character that's supporting this larger narrative around Rust as this anti-hero who has a clear sense of justice and morality, but it can get a little haywire in what that means and what that does for the plot. Maybe that's a disservice to Marty to say he's a side character, but
No, I think that's fair, but I do think that like I think that's true from like a narrative perspective, but I do think that Marty uh, uh, plays like almost an equal role in like the character dynamic between them because
yeah.
they are like each other's sort of character foils. It's difficult to talk about this show with people who haven't seen it because a lot of it is like speculation about what's to come, and I'm really hesitant to like say anything. I don't want to tip anything off, so I have to like be very careful with my words.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
I don't know if you feel that at all, Pat.
Yeah, that's kind of why I let Jen and Sarah lead, and then I comment on what they have to say.
Yeah, exactly.
Of which, Sarah, you must be devastated
For what
because
reason?
your main girl
I know.
Maggie is
Oh,
bending.
yeah.
Yep. Which is not surprising. Like I had a tiny sliver of hope that they would stay separated, but it's too early in the season for that probably. So, it was just it happens. What can you do? So, I still wish the best for her and the girls. Uh hopefully to get away from Marty.
Can we also talk about, I mean, so touching on that, we jump in years a little more, I feel like, in this episode than we typically do in others. And as a result, we got a very, very interesting and borderline graphic view into the family life that is uh, Marty and Maggie and the girls. Can you just
Mm-hmm.
unpack that for a minute?
I mean, not I wouldn't say it's a rant, but it confirms all of the things that we already knew about Marty, and him trying to change is honorable, and I'm like, cool, like way to go to try and change, but you can tell that he hasn't actually changed, and of course his in the future self narrating these past events acknowledges that he didn't change even though he was trying to, and so that scene it's hard to watch. It's pretty awful,
Yeah.
but it confirms what we already knew about him as a character.
Yeah, it's interesting because you see him do more damage that Maggie now has to deal with. Like beyond just the situation at hand, she now has to go and pick up the pieces and somehow try to mend the destruction that Marty just caused with his comments and his actions.
Yeah, and it's also interesting to see that in light of past decisions that he's made, where he feels a sense of delusion that he's helping. Like I'm thinking about him giving the money to the girl at the ranch to help her find a better option for herself, and it's just like to just soothe the sense of like guilt that he's had, and like clearly his relationship to and respect for women is super warped, but it's just like I think the show has some interesting like undertones in there because like we've seen plenty of like shitty men in movies, right? But the the show's doing a good job of showing like the complexity of them believing that they are good, and I thought that is an interesting added dimension that you often don't see in like a character like that is so obviously bad. um, it's like their desire to try and believe that they are a good person and they were doing things for the family and all this stuff. I thought was interesting.
I want to know what the group thinks was the thought behind Maggie's look that she gives Marty at the table when he says, "I'm just trying to understand," and the daughter says, "Well, maybe not everything is for you to understand," or something to the effect. Because I remember I watched it and I was like, I feel like this could be a couple different things.
Oh, what are your theories? I didn't think too
Well,
much about that.
I want to hear what the group thinks.
I also didn't think too much about that. So go ahead, Pat.
You over here, how many times have we talked about owls and you're not noticing looks or overthinking looks?
Yep. Didn't pay attention to that one. I was like, oh, she's just
Just like us, yeah.
yeah, I didn't read as much into that, but I'm curious to see what you made of it.
Me too. Wait,
Well,
Nate,
it's
did you think about anything of it?
Not too much. I just thought it was kind of like a, I don't know, like a knowing kind of like kids will be kids kind of thing. Like let it go. But yeah, what are your thoughts, Pat?
I
Yeah.
could have seen it being a, yeah, kids could be kids and she got you, and that's funny. I also, given their history, could see that being a try harder, Marty, like you're not getting there
Mm.
type of thought.
Oh, I see.
Because it follows right after they have that whole scene where she's like, "I'm willing to let you try."
Right. And is he like really stepping up or is he just occupying space?
Uh, sure. But like narratively, it's 7 years after that conversation, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know if that fits.
But I mean, in the scheme of Marty being back in
Presumably,
the
he's not
household,
as much on
is it
trial 7 years later.
no. I don't think it directly ties to that particular comment, but I think that him
Here's your
coming
story.
back in the household came with a certain expectation. Does it seem like he's meeting that expectation? Look, if I'm just going way out in the deep end, we can bring it back to owls and shit. It's fine.
No, I think it just points back to that idea of him trying to change but not necessarily actually changing. So I think it shows maybe the futility of his attempts, if that at all makes sense.
Yeah.
Like the futility of Rust trying to pretend that he likes watching TV.
Yeah, exactly. Just like that.
Which was just hella depressing because the whole time we're seeing them have these moments that we've like been excited for them to have as human beings. The whole time it's like voiced over by them being like, "Yeah, it didn't last long," and like we like emotionally are just so disengaged because we're like, and this is gonna be ripped away from them so soon, which I
Yeah.
it's just like a smart like choice to like bring those puzzle pieces together in that way because we're not even trying to be emotionally attached to this like moment of like we're not even on the roller coaster. Like they've told us this did not last at all.
I feel like there's a big elephant in the room that we're not touching. Jen, were you about to say something?
What are we thinking about the same elephant?
Well, mine was now that we truly know why these other two detectives are
Oh,
like inquisitive and curious about this case and all these pieces in great detail. We now have revealed, or the show has now revealed, the motive behind that, which is a very unexpected hypothesis. I would have felt like that would have been much more top of mind.
Was it an unexpected hypothesis? Like that was not unexpected to me. That I thought was set up through all of these episodes. Like I don't know. I wasn't surprised by that, but maybe that's just me.
Yeah, I agree. I think I was surprised at how um, believable their arguments were for like how Rust could be a suspect. Um,
wait, there are arguments for why Russ could be a suspect with the photos.
yeah, not just the photos, but like the narrative that they give to Marty about like him steering the case and stuff like that from like everything that we've seen. I thought was an interesting like argument for how how Russ could be like considered a suspect.
Well, I didn't see that coming. Jen, did you see that coming?
I didn't expect them to position Rust as a suspect. No, I thought they were investigating like practices that they used in the case, or that there was like details about this case that were hopefully helping them find the larger cases of because I think they mentioned that pretty explicitly at the beginning, like y'all thought that you got the guy but clearly you didn't, and so like what details do you have to help us like piece more information together.
Oh, I see. I see.
Yeah, so I thought they were like, tell us what you know, and then that'll help us solve these other present cases. But I didn't think it was like a Rust is um, guiding the case and potentially shaping or working with the whole system of whatever. Yeah, that was surprising to me.
Like Rust is a suspect twist.
Yeah.
I thought they, yeah, I don't know. I thought they built that up pretty well. Like every episode with how much they're asking about Rust and how it's even making like Marty suspicious and everything. Um, I, yeah.
Well, and even
But
at
yeah,
the end of the first episode, I think it's the first episode, Rust says, you better start asking the right questions. And so then that, I think, was what made me go, like, okay, they're not actually out for his help in solving this case. They're trying to get information elsewhere. That's why they're asking the wrong questions, is because they're working off of a different goal.
mm-hmm.
Which then makes more sense why uh I was like, why do they keep, why does present day Marty keep talking about Russ in all of his interviews? Right. I was like, there seems to be a fixation there that like Russ is not talking about Marty with
Yeah,
nearly the amount of volume. So that
I
checks out.
see. I see.
Yeah, that checks out now. I
I
was like, I
very
feel like
much
Russ is looking at the case. Marty is looking at Rust. And
right.
like, why is Marty not more engaged with the case? But
I very much like. I always love when Marty kind of has his little side smirk, and he's like, this whole time you think you guys were like feeling out Rust or whatever, and he was actually like getting the lowdown on y'all.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that kind of recontextualized a lot of like Rust's uh like waxing poetic over like the previous 4+ episodes and like the way that he does his interrogations and kind of like bullshits people into like uh uh revealing information and stuff. Curious how much of his like drunk ramblings were that versus like his own sort of actual nihilism and everything,
mm-hmm.
cynicism.
And also I think because we know that he is so crafty and skilled at interrogation as well, that he knows how to play the game, so he knows how to like be one step ahead of these other two that I think are
Mm-hmm.
clearly not as skillful at it. Like they're just kind of being like taken on a journey with him, and I feel like they're trying to figure out how to work with this person who is just not playing by their rules or the typical rules at all, which is fun to see. I appreciated seeing them kind of like come out of that mode of just like letting Russ do his thing, where they're now like applying a lot more pressure. I think that'll be really fun to see
You've been
more of.
bullshitting us all day.
Yeah, it is so good.
But I love that Rust quotes back a comment made by one of the cooks and to the detectives as though it's so like prophetic, and it's just like, oh, Rust, that's
Which one
that's
was it? Was it the time is a flat circle one?
yeah.
All right, should we do some awards? All right, first one's best jab. Pat, you wanna go first?
Sure. This is kind of the opposite of a jab, but it's still kind of said in a jabby type of way. But oh fuck him. Good to see you commit to something.
That was one of my alternatives.
Nice. Nate, what was yours?
uh, Mine wasn't between Marty and Russ, but it was something Russ said to the detectives where he's like, when he says get a warrant, he's like, Christ, try working a case.
Nice. Sarah, what was yours?
Mine is from the captain, and he says, "Cole, you couldn't manage to get shot?"
Nice. Mine is from Dewal Adu at the beginning of the episode. He said, "I don't like your face. It makes me want to do things to it."
It's a good one.
Okay, best character clue.
Sorry, before that, doesn't he say, "I can see your soul in the corner of your eyes"?
Yeah. It's corrosive, like acid.
Yeah, talk about a burning intensity.
Yeah.
But he's not necessarily wrong.
Mm-hmm. Okay, best character clue. Sarah, you want to go first?
I chose when the two detectives get frustrated and they leave the room. They don't turn off the camera, so it's still recording when Rust is in there by himself. So I saw that as them like trying to do something tricky, but like Rust is probably paying attention and spotted that. So he probably didn't do anything. But I appreciated their attempt at being sneaky.
I guess I don't know that I would call it a clue, but Marty definitely has shown that he has a better understanding and expectation of how Rust is going to maneuver because Rust is like, "Yeah, go get backup and stuff, and I'll wait here or whatever." And Marty's like, "Fuck you, you ain't doing this without me." Like he knew like, "Okay, I can go do the thing again and let him take point, or I can just, dig my heels in the ground too."
Yeah. That was another possible jab. Was he's like, "You ever been hunting?" And he's like, "I'm not talking about sitting in a tree house waiting for some deer to walk up to you." He's like, "God, you're such a prick."
Hey, what was yours?
um, it's another Marty one. I think you kind of alluded to it earlier, but I think just like the kind of fleeting happiness or stability over like the 7 years between this and the whatever happens in 2002 is like you can kind of really see the melancholy building in him and like all the regrets and everything about uh, just that whole period and everything leading up to it.
Mm-hmm. My character clues were after Marty takes a shot through the bullet through the head for Reggie Ledoux, he's like kind of paralyzed in that moment and like, oh my god, what did I just do? And Rust immediately is like barking out instructions on how to make sure this is set up properly. So just their ability to kind of like move quickly and recover quickly from like big moments, I think is kind of significant. Clearly, Rust is very sharp in this aspect, probably from experience, and Marty's a little bit kind of following his lead in that aspect.
Yeah, I also think that's the first time Marty fired his weapon on duty.
In a lot of ways, I feel like this episode feels like episode 1 of a new season because there's so much exposition, there's so much setup for the second half that, like you guys mentioned, like there's probably a lot that they seeded here that we're talking about, and you're like, how do I not reveal too much of how they like plant those seeds and then harvest those later. So I feel like there's so many things that are planted now, and this feels like the whole framing of the show is totally different. Like the primary case that we're following is actually like a totally different case at a meta level now. There's 2 layers of this that has opened up.
Well, even, I mean, just from a like visual experience, like we are outside of the room. Like we see Rust walk out of the room. Like,
Yes.
we've that's been a container for us this whole time, and now that is no longer that. So like, who knows where we're gonna go from here?
I'm intrigued also
Yeah.
to see if they continue with the 3 storylines and 3 timestamps, or if we've like moved to the one in the past, but the one that's in the middle. I don't know what year it is, but I think you guys mentioned that they do this in the later in like seasons 2 in the later seasons of True Detective, where there's now 3 connected storylines that are all feeding into each other. I'm intrigued to see if they do that more.
In season 3, they start with 3, and
Okay.
the way they do the like aging of the characters doesn't make it obvious. Whereas like when you look at Rust in the Room versus Rust 1995, if you're mixing those up, you need to get off the sauce.
Oh, that's right. Nate, you haven't watched anything beyond True Detective. To you, the whole show is just season 1.
I was told otherwise.
Yeah.
It was great. I mean, it's synonymous with season 1.
I was told, Nathan, I was told otherwise. I was told last week by people who know you very well that you participated in a viewing experience of at least 3 episodes of season 2 with them. They remember you sitting on the couch adjacent to them.
That is a false memory. They remember me sitting on the couch next to them for season 1 and maybe the first episode of season 2, but I promise I haven't seen anything past season 2, episode 1.
That's not what I was told. You're about to make a house of cards, a frail familial foundation that has existed for over a decade fall apart.
This won't hold up in court. This is a he said, she said. You want to hear anything from me, you got to make a deal.
Is there anything you're looking ahead to?
Being done with this?
Yeah.
Well, so my smartass answer that's in my notes is a conclusion. But I am looking forward to more Pat attacking Nate with various facts from the past. I'm looking forward to more of those interactions because those are always fun.
You hold on too much.
It's not me, it's my brain. You think I want to keep all this nonsense in there?
Yes.
No.
You've like Pavlovian conditioned yourself to like squirrel this stuff away. It's just like, this could be useful.
A moment like this. All right. Well, this is our review and discussion of episode 5. You can find it available on Max. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of TV and Us. Our name sums it up. We're big fans of TV and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. Everyone is welcome here, so we're so glad you spent time with us, and we're continuing our journey through True Detective Season 1. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you tune into your favorite shows. Drop us a review letting us know your thoughts about episode 5. You can connect with us on Instagram and Twitter at TVNSPod, or email us at tvnspod@gmail.com. We will be back next week to discuss episode 6. We hope you have an amazing week, and we'll see you again soon.